This is Holland, a new album from the Beach Boys. 9 new songs, plus a very special surprise. Now available on Brother Reprise Records and Warner Brothers Tapes. We all know, of course, the Beach Boys traveled to the Netherlands, to the village of Baambrugge, to record Holland. And I was lucky enough to be in Europe for the past couple weeks, and I was able to visit not just Baambrugge, but several other Beach Boys related locations as well. So I thought, both to coincide with Mike and Bruce's European tour, and to recognize all these wonderful albums that happen in the UK, or in the Netherlands, or elsewhere, let's take a look at some Beach Boys European locations, shall we? So I kicked off my European tour with a stop in Paris. Have you ever heard of that movie Paris When It Sizzles? That was a pretty apt name because it was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Paris. And while my traveling companions all wanted to see the Eiffel Tower and the Arch of Triumph and so on, my big goal was to see Olympia Music Hall, where the Beach Boys had played several times, even concerts as recent as a decade or so ago. I wanted to see this because there is a sort of gray area release. We've talked about quite a few of these on this channel before. One that can be sold retail or online, but is not an officially licensed Beach Boys product. And there's one that's available in vinyl and digital, probably CD too. Live in Paris, 1969. This was taken from a concert film that was recorded at that venue back in 1969. And then someone used the audio to create an album from it. Now, this is a really interesting recording, again, done at the Olympia, which is a very beautiful building, has its own cafe next to it and so on. But this is one of the few Beach Boys items that I passed on because the audio quality on the digital version that Amazon had is so poor it was unlistenable. I don't know if Amazon still has it listed or not, but even then, unless someone went through and cleaned it up, I would never purchase it because I want something I can actually listen to. No doubt it was pulled from one of the concert footage, you know, one of the tapes that someone had, and they just pulled the audio off and slapped it in MP3 form online and didn't bother to clean it up or anything like that. But that's unfortunate because this Live in Paris concert, again, the LP floats around. I don't know if the sound quality is better. But that concert has some really cool stuff. Live versions of Breakaway and Cotton Fields and The Nearest Faraway Place, as well as a ballad medley with songs like Please Let Me Wonder and Don't Worry Baby and The Warmth of the Sun, kind of condensed into one interesting medley. Fascinating stuff. You can find the concert film very easily online. I'll try to link it below if I can find a really good quality one. Someday maybe I'll shell out for this, provided I think it's actually listenable. But interestingly enough, the Olympia's connection to the Beach Boys, of course, as we said, has been fairly recent, but it actually predates that 1969 recording as well. They played a show there in 1966. It's actually mentioned on the graduation day recording that they will soon be traveling to Paris, and that fall when they did, they played a brief show, a lot of sort of teenage geared songs, things like Papa Ooh Mau Mau. Their early hits were condensed into a medley and so on, but actually one recording is officially released on Made in California. You're So Good to Me, La 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 La, Live in Paris 1966, was recorded at Olympia as well. The only track from that 1966 concert that's been widely released. We all know You're So Good to Me, of course, from Summer Days and Summer Nights album. But really interesting to actually visit it. So sadly, I didn't get a chance to go inside. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, but I did eat at the restaurant next door, had some delicious Parisian food, and our waitstaff was super nice too. I've often been told how rude Paris is, but truth be told, really didn't have any issues with anybody. I don't know, everyone drives like a maniac, I will say that, but other than that, it was pretty cool. But it was nice to have a good meal and take a look, and I'll also include a portrait of the Olympian Music Hall that was painted and hung up in the cafe as well. So a lot of history here. The theater had been occupied by the Nazis at one point back in the 40s. So really interesting stuff with several Beach Boys connections, including one legitimate track and one of those questionable gray area albums. That was the only Beach Boys location in France. Let's move on to the UK. Here they are, the stars of the show from the USA with beautiful sounds, the Beach Boys! You might have recognized that last clip as the intro to the Live in London album. I've done a whole video on Live in London. Indeed, that's where I took that video clip from. It was the second Beach Boys live album following Beach Boys concert from 1964. Live in London, interestingly, was not released in the United States until 1976, when the group was riding the wave of their big Endless Summer revival, and under the incorrect and extremely bizarre title Beach Boys 69, actually proved to be fairly successful. But I can't imagine how it would have felt to have been one of the Beach Boys and be told, yeah, that new live album you did when you were over in England, yeah, that's not being released in the United States. That had to have hurt. But Live in London is a really interesting and fun live album. We have songs from Wild Honey, we have a song from Friends, we have an a cappella, Their Hearts Were Full of Spring. For years, this was the only place to find that recording. Today, of course, we have other live versions and studio takes available, things like that, but for a long time that was not the case. An alternate version of Live in London, or actually a couple alternate versions, were released on the digital set back in 2018, Beach Boys on Tour 1968. I do have a review of this set in the works, but it has two shows at the London Palladium, more on those later, and it has an alternate show at a venue called Finsbury Park Astoria, the next topic on our list, where the Live in London album was recorded. Now, Finsbury Park Astoria has a very long and complicated history with multiple names, such as the Rainbow Theatre, multiple remodelings, and so on. It's a very big, very beautiful building. Interestingly, it has become a church, the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God. I put that over there so I would get it correct. A big international, non-denominational sort of mega church that has been involved in various legal issues for several years and has a questionable reputation. They are now the owners of this concert venue. Although the door was wide open and they encouraged everybody to come on in, I did not go in reading some of the things in research for this video about the church and what it's been accused of. I wanted to make sure I didn't go in and kept my distance, but I did of course pose for some photos because from what I gather, the building itself hasn't changed a great deal, simply the branding and its use. Those are the things that have changed up. But Live in London, I really want to see where it was recorded. Very cool live album. Again, the alternate show, the one that wasn't used for the album, is available in its entirety on the Beach Boys on Tour set. And you might have an alternate cover besides this one with the Beach Boys. It's like an outtake photo from the 2020 album where they're sort of like blurred. It's a really interesting thing. I've been looking for one for years. I've never been able to find one, but this is the cover that most people recognize. And if you were growing up in the 70s in the US, you probably had this alternate cover, like on the 8-track. But I was really glad to at least see the venue where it was recorded, even though it's no longer a music venue and now has kind of a shady reputation. I also, of course, took a picture of the bridge that reads Finsbury, to kind of give us some geography. Took a few rides on the London Underground to get there, but I'd say it was definitely worth it. Let's take a look at what almost became the Live in London album next, shall we? However, the Live in London album almost didn't happen at Finsbury Park Astoria. Indeed, it almost took place at the next venue on our list, the London Palladium. You've probably heard of that before. Both Mike and Brian have played there before with their respective groups. The Three Stooges played there back in the 1930s. Almost every major act that's toured the British Isles has been to the London Palladium at some point. The London Palladium concerts, Beach Boys did those on their 1968 tour, the same tour that gave us Live in London. They did them in very early December, around December 1st, and recorded two shows at the Palladium, and those were to be the Live in London album. Presumably they would have gone through maybe and chosen the best take from each show to actually compile the final record. According to BeachBoysGigs.com, some kind of international distribution or recording policy was broken, and so ultimately those London Palladium shows could not be used, and they were kept in the can for many, many years, with one exception. There was one song that was different in those London Palladium concerts versus what was done for Live in London. And that would be All I Want to Do. All I Want to Do, of course, is one of the few Beach Boys songs that's X-rated, this wild, fuzzed-up sex rocker. I've often said on this channel it's their version of Helter Skelter, something that was so wildly different from what you'd expect for a Beach Boys recording. And that outtake, that one alternate song, it was replaced by Their Hearts Were Full of Spring for the record, but that outtake would pop up on Beach Boys Rarities in the 1980s in kind of a short, truncated form. The ending is missing, and then a re-edit, or using additionally discovered tapes, I would assume. An expanded version was on Made in California. But other than that, those London Palladium shows remained in the can. You know, you figure with only one song that's different, everything else is basically the same. There was maybe really no point in releasing them. But those two London Palladium shows, plus unused material and different show from Finsbury Park, were included on the 2018 digital download, Beach Boys on Tour 1968. So I wanted to see London Palladium. Sadly, I didn't get a chance to go inside. London Palladium is still a theater too, unlike Finsbury Park Astoria. But it was nice to actually see it, and it's such a huge, grand building. Very impressive. I would love to see a show there sometime should I ever return to London. But definitely a venue worth taking a look at. And if you've ever been to the UK and seen the Beach Boys or another cool concert there, please comment that below. Sadly, I didn't get to Brixton, and Brixton is where the Beach Boys and Status Quo recorded their redone Fun Fun Fun, but I would say 2 London venues, I'm happy with that. Let's take a look now at the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's go visit the Netherlands, shall we? And aging visibly as he speaks, manager Jack Riley says, "Someday, accounting will face a column just called Holland." Alright, we've come to the final album and location discussion for today. The Beach Boys, Holland, where the Beach Boys famously transplanted themselves from the US to a small village in the Netherlands known as Baambrugge. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but I had a very difficult time with Dutch. I know enough German I can kind of understand Dutch, but the exact pronunciations for an American are next to impossible. So of course the Beach Boys, as indicated in the Holland press book and various documents regarding the making of the album, shipped lots of equipment and instruments and themselves all the way to Holland to work on this album. Now, they lived in various locations throughout Holland, in Amsterdam, of course, and several villages and smaller towns surrounding it, but the recording studio itself was constructed in the village of Baambrugge. So I made a point to go to Baambrugge. So I arrived in Amsterdam by plane from Scotland, and Amsterdam is a beautiful city, and a very fun city to explore. You can see all kinds of unusual things, but it's also a very welcoming and warm and friendly city, and most Dutch people speak English. Most of them speak it quite well, too. But to get to Baambrugge, you take a train out of Amsterdam as far as you can go, and then take a bus into this tiny village right by a beautiful canal. And that is Baambrugge. Only a few hundred people live there. It's mostly homes. There was a restaurant there, Café de Punt. And I got to talking along with my traveling companions with the waitress there, and she knew all about the Beach Boys recording there. Indeed, the Beach Boys had eaten at the Café de Punt back in the 1970s. Sadly, they didn't have like a framed picture or a copy of the Holland album or anything on display, but she was very familiar with it and pointed out the exact location where the barn, as the recording studio that they built in Holland was often called, where it was built. Sadly, today, you can't actually go to the barn because it no longer exists, nor can you go to the exact spot where it stands, as it's on private property behind a large wall. But you can get very close to that wall, so I have several photos of me across the street from the cafe, standing near the wall. That was as close as I could get. This waitress, who was extremely helpful, also pointed out a video that's in Dutch, but I will link it below, of several Dutch fans who were able to go a little bit closer to the location than I was able to go. And that was a very helpful resource as well. So we were watching that video as we sat and had a delicious lunch next to the canal at this little cafe. And one of my traveling companions was looking at the video, and one of the suggested responses, or one of the suggested videos I should say, was one of my videos. He looked at it and said, "This looks like you." I said, "That's because that is me." So never thought I'd be a suggested video, but here we are. Anyway, got a few photos there. Beautiful place to visit. And the natives, very, very friendly, and even helped us use the bus route and everything like that. So can't complain. The Dutch people are some of the nicest on earth. And then we also went and visited Hilversum, which was a nearby city. Now, several of the Beach Boys lived in Hilversum. And indeed, in talking to the lady who ran the local photography museum, she pointed out that Hilversum is still known today in the music world as where much different tracks and things from around the world are sent to be edited and mixed and things like that. So Hilversum has earned the nickname Hillywood, as it's a sort of, I guess, mecca for music production, that kind of thing. And indeed, the Nazis had wanted to capture the city back in the 40s because of all the broadcasting and recording equipment that it had. And the Canadian Army liberated the city, so there's a statue of a polar bear there as well. But I thought that was really interesting too, to know that Holland, even outside of the Beach Boys, has a lot of sort of recording history to it, and has a lot of very interesting insight into not just the Beach Boys world, but also the music world. So very fascinating stuff. Sadly, I didn't know any precise locations in Hilversum where Carl or Blondie would have lived or worked, or any of the other Beach Boys that visited, but I was glad I was able to see it and learn a little bit about its musical connections. So should you visit Baambrugge, can you expect to actually see a physical Beach Boys site? Not really, but you can get close. It's a beautiful place to visit, and I think just to be near some of that Beach Boys history is, good enough, I would say. So I was able, of course, to learn about the locales behind Holland. Please forgive the traffic noise and my congestion. And that, my friends, does it for today. So if you visited any fun Beach Boys related locations, please comment them below. Or if you've been to cool places in Europe, please comment that below as well. I figured this was a good follow-up to my Beach Boys in Hawaii video from a few years ago. I hope to see you next time, my friends. So long!